One of the major talking points surrounding the Sacramento Kings this past offseason was how lucky they were to stay relatively healthy last season and how they would fare this year if the injury bug were to catch up with them. Well, are you happy, national media, because the injury bug has bitten the Kings, suffering multiple injuries, one of the major reasons why they were blown out tonight in their loss in New Orleans, 129-93, the final score. We'll break down the little bit of good, a whole lot of bad, and too much ugly right here for you on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And I know if I was tired of hearing all of the talk and all of the commotion and really a lot of, whether it's national media members, writers, commentators, whoever it was this offseason, trying to undermine what the Sacramento Kings did last year with, oh, look how lucky they were able to remain. The Kings barely suffered injuries compared to the rest of the league. And while there absolutely is some truth to that, there was no acknowledgement, of course, of the injury that Domantas Sabonis fought through since last December. There's no acknowledgement, of course, of De'Aaron Fox's injury that he suffered in the playoffs, and he even suffered an injury early on in that year. But regardless, we heard all this conversation about, hey, the Kings, they're not going to be able to stay as healthy this season as they did last season. And I don't think the Kings are going to be nearly as good as they were last year, because had they gotten hurt last year, they certainly wouldn't have been a third seed. Yada, yada, yada. Well, are you happy? Are you happy, national media? Because here is the injury bug striking the Sacramento Kings, I would say, more than certainly most of the league. Maybe not the most. Teams like the Phoenix Suns have yet to be fully healthy, and they're dealing with, of course, the extended injury now to Bradley Beal. But different teams have been hurt for different reasons. But Sacramento, they're getting bit left and right by this injury bug. This was or let's just run through some of the injuries that the Kings are dealing with right now. First off, the two that happened during this game. Keegan Murray out with a lower back injury. He did not come out to start the second half. We had no idea why. We really didn't get an update until late third quarter. And all we've been given is that it's a lower back injury. We have no idea the significance of the injury. We have no idea how long that's going to keep him out, what specifically is wrong with his lower back. Hopefully it's just soreness and tightness and not anything worse. But a back injury can be pretty difficult to work through for any athlete, let alone an NBA player. So we're hoping for good news from Keegan Murray, but he went down. Chris Duarte hurt his hand. It seems like everybody and their mother in Sacramento is just doomed to suffer some sort of hand injury. He left the game and was out for the remainder of the game with a left hand injury. Of course, we have Trey Lyles, who's been out the entire season with his calf injury. He's finally starting to work his way back. You have Alex Len, who's going to miss the next, 4 to 6 weeks or something like that, with an ankle injury that he suffered before this road trip began. You have Sasha Vezenkov that did not play in tonight's game. He's dealing with a left thumb injury. You have De'Aaron Fox, who just came back from the ankle sprain and is still battling through pain, as he has admitted. You have Kevin Huerter, who did play tonight. I was a bit surprised that he played tonight, but he got the start, dealing with a sprained finger on his non-shooting hand. And then Domantas Sabonis, who hasn't been listed or hasn't been diagnosed with any official injury, but he gets hit in the face every single time he steps on the floor at this point, so I'm sure he's feeling some bumps and bruises. There's 7 guys, 8 if you include Sabonis, but really truly 7 guys right there that are dealing with currently or are out because of injuries, either playing through it or are out. So the injury bug has bitten Sacramento. I'm not here to make any excuses. Okay, I'm not here to use the second night of a back-to-back excuse, the 3 games in 4 nights excuse, the injury bug excuse. To me, this is what the NBA regular season is. And to be a great team, not just a good team, a great team, which is what the Sacramento Kings are trying to get to. You have to be able to weather the ups and downs of the regular season, the times where everybody's healthy and the times where everybody's banged up. You have to have the depth to carry you through, but you have to have the stars to ultimately get you there and win games. So this is what we needed the Sacramento Kings to go through. These are the tests that the Kings face. And we're going to break down the, of course, blowout loss tonight. In fact, like I'm feeling a whole lot better after this blowout loss, which was their worst loss of the season, by the way, in terms of point total. Feeling way better about this loss than I felt after the second of the Houston Rockets blowout loss before the Kings started that homestand where everything started to really turn around. I'm feeling a whole lot better. A whole lot better. Now, also, speaking of the second Houston Kings loss, remember the Kings lost 2 in a row to the Rockets, got their butts kicked in both of those games. The Kings have the New Orleans Pelicans again on Wednesday night, so hopefully, depending upon the injury situation, they'll be in a position where they can stick it back to New Orleans. The one thing I don't want to see is the Kings come out and lay as bad of an egg in the second game against the same team as they did against Houston, of course. So hopefully we can see direct improvement in that sense in terms of game 2 against the team after you've gotten beaten down in game 1. So we'll have to wait and see for that on Wednesday. But there's different aspects of why I feel a lot better after this loss than I did after the Houston loss. The first one, to be honest with you, is the injuries, right? Like the Kings are just dealing with so many injuries, not just to superstars. I mean, it was Fox that was out, the main guy that was out during the Houston losses. Fox, of course, is playing against the New Orleans Pelicans, but so many different guys, like I just listed, important key pieces to Sacramento's rotation, Sacramento's starting lineup, Sacramento's depth, all dealing with these nagging injuries and things that are either keeping them out or having them play banged up. So injuries certainly play a part in that. Fatigue did have a clear impact in this game. Like I mentioned, third game in 4 nights, second night of a back-to-back, not using it as an excuse because the Kings have beaten down teams on the second night of a back-to-back before. They just faced and beat Dallas last night, and Dallas was on the second night of a back-to-back. So everybody's going to deal with that advantage or disadvantage at some point in the season. Nobody feels sorry for you if you're tired or not. And this early in the season as well, you got to find a way to be able to overcome that. I will say, though, it's not easy to play any team when you're fatigued, but I have to imagine having to deal with Zion Williamson when you're tired. That's probably a nightmare. Zion was a beast tonight. He scored 18 of his 26 points in the second quarter. When things started getting out of control for Sacramento, which there was a major awesome play by Malik Monk. Malik, I think Domantas Sabonis tried to throw an alley-oop to Malik. I don't know what the pass was, but it did not work. Malik saves it from going out of bounds, flings it to Kevin Huerter in the corner, who hits a three-pointer. That put the Kings up around, I think it was 45-41 at that point after he hit that three. From that point, I think the Kings were outscored 88-48 for the remainder of this game. So there was that great moment, and the Kings were leading, and they came back from 12 down in the first quarter, and Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox had gotten off to a good start. Harrison Barnes was playing pretty well. Keegan Murray had hit a three. Kevin Huerter had hit a couple threes. It was like, okay, second night of a back-to-back. Kings weathered the early storm. They were okay. And then everything completely fell apart, and it started with how dominant Zion was in that second quarter. I didn't like the idea of putting Harrison Barnes on Zion Williamson. I don't know who could have done a better job. Like, Zion is just a nightmare matchup for a lot of teams, but especially a team like Sacramento. The Kings don't necessarily, unless they're throwing Alex Len out there in terms of muscle mass and size to not get pushed around. But even so, we know how much quicker and how the burst that Zion has and how that could affect and get right by Alex Len. So I don't know if the Kings really had anybody on their roster that could have handled or contained what Zion does. But he really took over in the second quarter, and that's where this game started swinging out of control. So the injuries have something to do with it. The fatigue in the second night of a back-to-back certainly has something to do with me not feeling as bad. But also, full perspective is important. When the Kings lost those 2 games against the Houston Rockets, even with De'Aaron Fox out, at that point I was questioning, hey, can the Sacramento Kings offense be what it used to be or be what it was last season while their defense is trying to improve? Is one taking away from the other? You remember in this studio at ABC 10, I talked about how the Sacramento Kings look broken. I did 2 post-game shows after both of those Houston losses here in this studio, and I was very worried, very concerned about how the Kings looked, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now I have the full context of we know how good this Kings team can be. We know they can play good defense and good offense at the same time, or at the very least, they can play really, really good offense with improved defense. During this stretch, Sacramento has been, I think, 7th or 8th in offensive and defensive rating. during this time. Overall for the season, I think they're right in the middle of the pack defensively while the offense is continuing to go up. We see the impact that De'Aaron Fox has. Like, I know at this point, or at least I think I know, how good the Sacramento Kings are and how good they can be on both ends of the floor at the same time, and how one end can carry them and while the other end is struggling, or vice versa, or whatever the case. Like, I know I have more faith and more trust and more of an understanding of what the Sacramento Kings are trying to do, and more importantly, that the Kings are capable of playing their new style of basketball. So a loss like this, winning 2 out of 3 in 3 games in 4 nights, having a 6-game winning streak snapped on the second night of a back-to-back against a rested team when you're dealing with all these injuries. Overall, I can take all that context, not make an excuse, but take that context, recognize it for what it is, and just accept it and go, okay, it's a bad loss, a really bad loss. The Kings got their butt kicked, but I'm more concerned about what's happening to this roster injury-wise, and not nearly as concerned as or with the final score, or with how tonight's game specifically went, or certain things from tonight's game. Certain guys struggled, absolutely. De'Aaron Fox had his worst scoring game of the season. That's probably going to bring his points per game average down a little bit. I don't know if he's still leading the league in scoring or not. I don't really care about that at this point. I care about Keegan Murray's back. I care about this team not suffering any more freaking hand injuries, for God's sake, and them getting back as healthy as possible so they can continue to play at that high level that they're capable of playing. I have full faith and confidence that Sacramento is going to be able to overcome these injury issues. And even when they're dealing with these injury issues, they'll still be a good team. They'll still win basketball games. And I know full hand, so I'm warning you ahead of time. Like, this is what you're going to expect, right? You have the national media and these commentators saying the Kings, they can't, or when the injury bug hits, if the Kings deal with injuries, they're not going to be as good. Well, as soon as the Kings prove them wrong, it's suddenly the narrative is going to turn, or the goalposts are going to move again, and it's going to become this thing of, the Kings now have to prove it in the playoffs. So, whatever. Just the Kings need to focus on getting healthy, working their way through this, and of course, with guys going down, they need some of their big names like Fox, like Sabonis, like Barnes to step up. And also, in a game like this, where it's a big blowout and there's basically an entire quarter of garbage time minutes, that's opportunity for somebody else. Think about this. Like Keon Ellis, who, by the way, he's also out with injury. I actually don't even think I put him on this list. So really, it's 8 guys that are dealing with injury because Keon Ellis didn't play. Keon, how good were the Sacramento Kings in games where Keon suddenly was either starting or playing important rotational minutes? And that all started because of how well Keon played in that second Houston blowout. So I hope Keon's teammates were paying attention, because those minutes are not just empty minutes. Mike is paying attention to what his end-of-bench guys do during that time. And if they're playing the way that he wants the Kings to play, if they're playing the right way, he's going to look at that and potentially reward them with opportunities in wins and major minutes going forward. So let's look at a couple of guys, or a few guys, that got some opportunity tonight. Colby Jones had 8 points, 4 of 8 shooting from the field, 1 rebound, 1 steal. Colby Jones dominated in the 2 games, I think it was 2 games, that he played for the Stockton Kings. I mean, he absolutely dominated. And one of the clear signs of an NBA player is when they go to the G League, they're on a different level, right? Colby Jones is that guy. Colby is on a different level, a higher level than the G League. He's still a rookie trying to implement himself and learn and pick up the game and try and be a important piece to a team that has deep playoff and championship aspirations. So, I mean, there's going to be a learning curve there no matter what, and it's a tough task for any rookie, let alone a second-round pick, to try and break his way into that rotation. But Colby's doing all the right things, and he got opportunity here, and he put up some good numbers. Kessler Edwards, the numbers aren't phenomenal. 3 points, he hit a three-pointer, 4 rebounds, 1 block, but I thought Kessler Edwards came into the game, at times had to guard Zion. Kessler started the second half in place of the injured Keegan Murray, and I thought Kessler did a good job. I mean, we know what Kessler can provide on the defensive end of the floor. If he can add a more consistent three-point shot to his game, maybe the minutes will increase. But when Kessler gets opportunity, he's ready to go. But I do have to be critical of Davion Mitchell, because Davion Mitchell got 19 minutes tonight. He took back the Keon Ellis minutes with Keon being out with an injury. In 19 minutes, Davion Mitchell, I can't remember any major defensive impact that he made in this game. It's hard because it was a blowout loss and nothing looked good defensively when you give up 129 points, so I'm not putting that on him, but I didn't see anything noticeable on the defensive end from Davion. And in 19 minutes, he had just 2 points, which he got at the free throw line, went 0 of 2 from the field, had 0 assists. No blocks, no steals either. I don't want to be negative about Davion Mitchell. I really, truly don't, because I like the guy a lot, and I believe he can be impactful for Sacramento Kings winning. But Keon Ellis got opportunity. He took it, he played the right way, and put up numbers to boot. Davion Mitchell gets 19 minutes of opportunity here, a chance to take back his spot with his play. Keon literally can't do anything about it because Keon is out and hurt. Davion comes out, does next to nothing on the offensive end, which are the main concerns about his game. And then defensively, it's not like he's doing enough defensively to make up for all that. It was an opportunity wasted, in my mind, for Davion Mitchell. Other than the injuries, specifically the injury to Keegan Murray, I have one major fear right now with the Sacramento Kings. One major fear, and it has everything to do with Malik Monk. I'll explain more about that here in just a second. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL and NBA season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So I'm encouraging you to do something that isn't exactly the correct way of playing FanDuel, right? Don't look for a bet that putting $5 down would get you a solid payout or anything like that, or even get you an even $5 or $10 total dollars back if you win. Look for a money line that you can find the biggest favorite possible. Someone that if you put $5 down, you're only going to win like 50 cents or something like that. Find that bet, put the $5 down, because it's not about the money that you win back from that bet. It's the $150 worth of bonus bonus bets that you can use to bet on anything. NBA, NFL, spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You can bet on almost every single sport, and they have so many fun bets, not just bets specific for each game. There's so many different ways to play on FanDuel, so if you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, kick off the NFL season, and tip off the NBA season with all the best action. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So I was driving into the ABC 10 studios today, and I was listening to D'Lo and KC, and they were talking with James Ham, and they were talking about the impact of Malik Monk. And they're talking about, like, everybody's attention is on De'Aaron Fox right now, and rightfully so, right? Fox is playing at an MVP level, but while Fox is shining, and even Domantas Sabonis has been playing really, really well lately, while those two guys are absolutely filling it up and establishing themselves as one of the best duos in the entire league, Malik Monk is coming in off the bench in that six-man role. His assists are up. His scoring is barely up. His shooting is way up in terms of his three-point shooting percentage. Malik Monk is balling right now. And remember, this is a contract year for Monk. The Kings signed Monk to a 2-year deal. He's worth way more money than what the Kings are paying him, right? A very team-friendly deal what they signed Malik to. Malik has absolutely made the most out of this opportunity with the Kings. I think it was like a help me, help you type situation. He's obviously helping the Sacramento Kings win basketball games, and the Kings have put Malik in a position to where he can succeed, and he is going to get paid this offseason. He's going to have a lot of interest this offseason. So while I was listening to their conversation and thinking about Malik's impact, I realized that the better that Malik plays, obviously it has a better impact on Sacramento, so I'm rooting for Malik Monk to play better and better every single game. But the better he gets, the more scared I am of the decision that not just the Sacramento Kings have to make this upcoming offseason, because I think their decision is going to be easier than Malik Monk's decision. Because Malik deserves to get the bag, right? He's had a pretty rocky career up to this point. Some highs recently, mostly lows. And he deserves a pretty hefty payday. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to get anything close to a max contract or anything like that. But my thought was, he is one of the two make-it-happen guys on the team. And what I mean by that is, the other one is De'Aaron Fox. Like, if the Kings are in a playoff series, in a big playoff game, late in the game, or they're dealing with maybe what they dealt with tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans, right? They're just reeling. They're on the wrong end of an 8-0 run. They're falling apart a little bit. They just need someone to go out there and get them a bucket. Well, all eyes mainly turn to De'Aaron Fox to do that. But De'Aaron can't play all 48 minutes. And typically Malik Monk is in the game when De'Aaron Fox is not. Malik has also become that I'm going to go get us a bucket guy, whether it's from three-point range or attacking the basket or even creating a bucket with his playmaking, right? He's chaotic in the best way. He just has this chaos about the way that he plays, and it usually results in more good for the Sacramento Kings than bad at this point, right? Whether he's throwing lobs to JaVale McGee and always looking for his two-man game with his center. He's chucking up threes with full confidence. He's going full speed to the rim and doing one of those either like wide sweeping passes or those crazy like reverse finger roll layups that he'll throw up. Like Malik is a go make something happen type guy that I think is essential for a team who wants to make a deep playoff run. And we even saw in the playoffs last year, right? How Malik stepped up at times for Sacramento. He was arguably the second best player for the Kings in that entire Kings-Warriors playoff series. So Malik is important. On top of that, like I was thinking, okay, can the Kings afford to keep Malik around? Like I said, Malik's going to get the bag. And I don't know how much Vivek Ranadive and the Kings want to go into the luxury tax to keep this team together. They better be pretty confident that this team is actually a championship contending team if they're going to play a heavy luxury tax bill. I think the writing's on the wall at this point. I think the Kings are going to eventually dip into the luxury tax if they're going to want to keep this core together long term and turn it into a dynasty like that of the Golden State Warriors of recent years. But then I thought, it's not just that can the Sacramento Kings afford to keep Malik. Can the Sacramento Kings afford to lose him? I don't know how many other guys that the Kings could get realistically for less money than what Malik is going to be making this after this season. Certainly not on the same kind of deal that Malik is being paid right now. Who's going to be able to come out and join this team and make the same level of impact and affect winning the way Malik Monk does? The way Malik Monk plays basketball is the way the Sacramento Kings play basketball and want to play basketball. The energy, the hustle, the ball movement, sometimes the flash and the flare, the pace. Of course, they want to be a little more impactful on the defensive end, and Mike Brown has challenged Malik Monk to be better on that end of the floor. But Malik embodies in so many ways what this Sacramento Kings team is and what they want to be. And when they're at their best, typically Malik Monk is right in the middle of it with De'Aaron Fox. Not to mention De'Aaron Fox is his best friend. Some people seem to think that would help with negotiations. Maybe they're right. Maybe Malik will say, I'll take less money here in Sacramento to stay with De'Aaron and stay with what we got going here rather than take more money and go to player or team whatever. I don't know. I don't know what his motivations are. I think a lot of his motivation is going to be money and him getting the bag that he deserves. I think winning is also going to have a significant motivation for Malik, right? And maybe he just wants to stay in Sacramento because the Kings are winning. Hopefully that's the case. But what about role? How much does Malik care about his role? If Malik came to you, you're Monty McNair. Malik comes to you and he gives you an ultimatum. Doesn't matter what the money figure is. Let's say there's a team out there. Let's say it's the Detroit Pistons. What a bad example. That's a really bad example. A middle of the line team. Let's say it's Thunder wouldn't make sense. There's a team out there, for God's sake, that says, Malik, we'll pay you a little bit more money than the Kings are offering you, and you'll become our starting two guard. If Malik comes and gives Monty McNair an ultimatum and says, I'll stay in Sacramento. I'll stay with the Kings. I'll keep going what we're doing here. I'll take the less money, but I want to start. How do the Kings handle that ultimatum? How do you handle that ultimatum? Let me know in the comment section down below if you're watching on YouTube. Let me know on Twitter @MattGeorgeSack, or you can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. How do you handle that ultimatum if Malik Monk gives it to you? Some of you might think it's a no-brainer. Yes, I think Malik Monk should be starting now. Absolutely. If the difference between keeping and losing Malik Monk is to make him a starter or not, absolutely. Some of you say yes without hesitation. I say yes with hesitation because I think Malik Monk is in the absolute perfect role here with the Kings right now. He's still likely on the floor a lot to close games. So it's not like, even though he's not starting, he's not out there with the starters in the closing lineup, which many would say is it's more important to close than it is to start, especially in a close game. Malik's role, I think, is perfect. And a lot of, I think, Malik's positive impact that is going to get him paid is because of the role that the Sacramento Kings have given him and putting him in a position to really succeed, a position to showcase what he can do as a facilitator and a distributor like he's really blossomed into here in Sacramento. I say yes, but I'm hesitant because I really like him off the bench. But for me, if the difference in Malik starting, or rather walking or staying in Sacramento is him starting or not, yeah, I'm making him a starter, and then I'm figuring it out. Another question is, maybe Malik is wanting the bag. Maybe he wants the money. If the Kings don't want to go super heavy into the luxury tax, and I don't know how much they could even offer him, what players do they choose Malik Monk over? Do they try to move on from a Harrison Barnes and free up that money to give to Malik Monk? Do they try and move on from a Kevin Huerter to free up some money to give to Malik Monk? You still have to fill out your roster, and there's the chance that the Sacramento Kings try and go out and get another guy in this season at the trade deadline. Let's say, for example, an OG Anunoby, and I think he's going to have a payday coming up as well. So there's just a lot of unknowns about these negotiations with Malik Monk, and going into it relying heavily on Monk's relationship with De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings winning basketball games and Monk wanting to continue being a part of a good thing going here. Maybe that doesn't carry as much weight as we're hoping it does. This is a problem for much later in the year, right? As of right now, Malik is a King. That's all he's focused on, although I'm sure a payday's in the back of his head, but he's certainly not doing things selfishly in order to get paid. He's trying to win basketball games and make the most out of his situation here, so we can kind of file up these concerns or ball up these concerns and file them in the back of our head for a little bit, right? Just keep them on the back burner. Know it's coming, but not overreact to them as of right now. But I think there's interesting questions to ask and interesting things to talk about. Also, really quick, congratulations to De'Aaron Fox. He was named the Western Conference Player of the Week for last week. The Kings went 4-0 last week. Fox averaged 32 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals over those games. We know how much of a beast De'Aaron Fox is. There's no chance they could give it to anybody else with how well the Kings played and how well De'Aaron Fox has been playing. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? That's daily fantasy sports. It's the #1 platform in North America, and they're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And the best part about it, it's not you versus the Sharks and the pros and fellow fans out there trying to beat them and take their money. It's just you versus the PrizePicks projected numbers, and you pick higher or lower than their projections for up to 2 to 6 players. So, for example, you can go into a game, let's say, for the next Kings-Pelicans game, right? Let's say De'Aaron Fox is at 26.5 points. Well, you take the higher on that. Let's say Domantas Sabonis is at 11.5 rebounds. You take the higher on that. Brandon Ingram is at 3.5 threes made. You take the lower on that. Plus, my favorite is they have, like, you can combine points, assists, and rebounds. So if Domantas Sabonis has a triple-double, that could become like a 41-42 ultimately point night if you combine everything together. So you can bet on stuff like that. There's so many fun ways to play on PrizePicks, and it's of course not just for NBA basketball. They have these fun games on Sundays where you can combine an NFL player prize pick with a NBA player prize pick. There's just so many fun ways to play right now. And when you win, they offer you quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and statistical categories for you to play with. I encourage you to go to prizepicks.com right now. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Before we wrap up, I wanted to play for you a clip from Run It Back FanDuel TV. And this is a clip that has been making the rounds here in Sacramento, or at least on Sacramento social media, and I reacted to it. I've seen a lot of people react to it. Basically, Shams is talking about Sacramento as a trade destination. There's a couple on the show. There's a couple former players, Lou Williams and Chandler Parsons. And both of them have a not surprising reaction to Shams talking about how Sacramento could become a destination for major players at this trade deadline. Watch this clip or listen to this clip, and we'll talk about the two major takeaways from this clip here on the other side.
I think this is the first time in a really long time. I mean, maybe when Chris Webber was with the Kings, that you can look at the Kings as like a trade destination. They're going to be involved in every star player, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, maybe Zach LaVine, whenever stars become available, because Monty McNair, that organization, they've done a good job at keeping their assets. They have tradable contracts, so they're going to be a player for stars coming up for sure. I think eventually they could add a third piece.
Hold on, Shams. Why are these two making faces on the end? What's going on?
Shams, you ever been to Sacramento, Shams?
Oh, I knew it was coming.
I'm just saying they have the pieces,
No,
they have the assets, and they have a team that could be.
Have you ever?
I have been to Sacramento. I went to their first game against the Warriors. It was crazy packed. It was lit.
Have you ever lived in Sacramento, Shams?
That I've never done.
Now, basketball-wise, you make a great case. But when it comes to free agency, City is very much a part of that decision.
That's why they have to trade for someone.
Got to
That's
trap
why they got to
someone.
trade for someone.
It won't be voluntary.
On,
I guarantee it. Now, when they get there, they'll probably fall in love with the fan base. Sacramento is one of the great places to play, great basketball environment. You'll probably get stuck there once you're there, fall in love with the culture of the fans and the people, but nobody's just going.
So two things to talk about here. Number one, the main one that I think a lot of people are reacting to. It's what I reacted to. That's Lou Williams and Chandler Parsons laughing at the idea of Sacramento being a destination. Now, Lou brings up free agency destination. Shams is obviously talking about trade destination. Big difference between trading and free agency. Trades, you're forced. Free agency, you can choose, right? But the laughter is what has people up in arms. And Lou's saying, have you been to Sacramento? Have you seen Sacramento? City matters. City this, city that. All I'll say is this. Arguably the greatest Sacramento King of all time, when he was traded to Sacramento, threw a fit, did not want to be here. I'm, of course, talking about Chris Webber. His dad forced him to come. It's now one of his favorite cities in the world. He'll forever be a legend here. He'll forever love Sacramento. Sacramento changed his mind. DeMarcus Cousins absolutely adored Sacramento. Didn't want to leave Sacramento. Cried when the Kings traded him away. I'm not saying that to make fun of him. I'm just saying how attached he was to this community. And he was phenomenal in this community despite the issues that he had on the floor. Tyrese Halliburton wanted to be here in Sacramento. Was upset when he was traded away, not just because the Kings chose to trade him, but because he wanted to be here and he saw himself as part of the group to finally turn the Kings around. And De'Aaron Fox. Been very vocal about wanting to be a King very early in the process. He knew the Kings were interested in him. He knew he was likely coming to Sacramento. He fell in love with the Kings and the community very quickly, the city very quickly. And on top of all of that, he's compared Sacramento and their fan base to that of a college town like Kentucky and how unique it is. I bring all that to say players can laugh all they want about the idea of playing in and becoming a member of the Sacramento community. All I have to say is this. If a player wants to become a part of something special, if they want to join the Kings as they are right now and help this team become a legitimate championship contender, if they want to play alongside De'Aaron Fox, if they want to play with Domantas Sabonis, who's going to do everything in his power to help them get their shots and make them look good, if they want to play for Mike Brown, who's one of the most loved and respected coaches in the league, if they want to win basketball games and be a part of winning, they'll want to come to Sacramento. Doesn't mean they will. Doesn't mean a team will trade them to Sacramento or the Kings will trade for them. But I think a lot of players, to Sham's point, want to come to Sacramento because of how well the Kings are playing right now and how much fun they are. If you are a player that is more motivated by your location, if you're more motivated by a city with more nightlife, better clubs, a Miami scene, a Los Angeles scene, if that's your motivation over winning basketball games, that's fine. I don't blame you. If you're a young player with money, hey, have at it. Can't say I would feel any different if I was in that position. But if you're not interested in joining the Kings because of the city, odds are the Sacramento Kings aren't interested in grabbing you to help them win basketball games in the first place. So Lou can laugh. Chandler can laugh. Doesn't really bother me. Because players who know what the Sacramento Kings are doing, who are paying attention to what the Sacramento Kings are doing, are probably likely not too afraid of the idea or against the idea of wanting to become a part of that. And of course, here's Sham saying, yeah, the Sacramento Kings are serious players in the trade scene. Absolutely, they should be. No duh. Monty McNair has always talked about staying aggressive and making a move at the right time. Also staying as fluid as possible and keeping their options open and flexible. Well, the Kings might be in a position at this trade deadline to make a major move that could put them over the top. There's always some risk to it, but it's fun for the Kings to be in this position versus the position that they're normally in around trade deadline time, which is we're either looking for a savior or we're selling our pieces for draft picks and to save some money so we can rebuild for the 18th time. Very different scenarios. I'll take this one every day of the week, even if that includes Lou and Chandler and other players or personalities or whoever they are laughing. Doesn't really bother me. On tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, Chris Biederman from the Sacramento Bee. He was out in New Orleans. He's been a part of this road trip for a while, but he was in New Orleans watching this game tonight. Sorry, Chris. He will remain in New Orleans and be there for Wednesday night's game. But tomorrow, during the off day and no travel, he's going to join me, and we're going to have a lengthy discussion about Harrison Barnes. What is Harrison Barnes' role with the Sacramento Kings, or specifically, what should the Kings expect? What should Kings fans expect? And what do the Kings do about the games where Harrison Barnes just disappears? Chris and I will have a long and honest conversation about that, so we hope you will join us on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.